So yesterday, Arsenal traveled to Stamford Bridge to take on Chelsea and started terribly, let Chelsea into the game. I think Chelsea showed that they're starting to get it together. Things are starting to click. They're on an upward trajectory and grabbed a 2-goal lead. Then, of course, Arsenal managed to come back and tie the game up, even had a little bit of time to try to win it. Couldn't find the winner. Things finished 2-2. So, is that 1 point earned or 2 points dropped? I think you can make an argument really for either on the day. But I think what we've learned is that something's not really clicking in terms of our attack. And, you know, this is the second, I mean, if you want to add Fulham, the third London derby in which we've just seemingly forgotten how to function as a top-level football team. I mean, you saw it against Spurs, obviously you saw it against Fulham. I think you saw it today against Chelsea, where they just came out so shyly, so tentatively, and really let the opponent into the match way too soon. So that's something that I think Mikel Arteta is going to have to sort out in the coming weeks if, you know, we are to mount what will hopefully be a title charge this season. More on that on the pod. Let's get to the winners and losers from this match, and we'll start with the winners. Winner number one, I think, is almost definitely Bukayo Saka, right? And we missed him against Manchester City. Obviously, we went on to win that match. Gabriel Jesus did very well in that position in his stead, but there's no denying that Bukayo Saka is probably the most important player for this team, right? And we're, I think 12, maybe 13 games into the season. Bukayo Saka already has 11 goals and assists, right? I think he has 5 goals, 6 assists. The next closest to him after that is, it's a tie between Martin Odegaard and Leandro Trossard, each with 5 goal contributions. So I think that just goes to show you what an impact Saka has on this team. And we saw it yesterday. Jesus got pulled for Nketiah. I think that was maybe due to the fact that he was getting kicked a lot. Gabriel Martinelli got substituted, and Martin Odegaard even was taken off the pitch. But Saka stayed on the whole time. And you saw why in the 84th minute when he, picked up the ball, or Kai Havertz gave him the ball on the right wing, and he managed to tuck into that right half space, and he got, the littlest bit of room to play a really inch-perfect cross to the back post for Leandro Trossard to, tap home and make it 2-2 and at least leave Stamford Bridge with something. And yeah, he's he's an immensely important player for us, and I think it's very fitting that he ended the match yesterday wearing the captain's armband, because, there's a couple other guys that we'll talk about later in the video who, are the main leaders, I think, of this team, but Saka's right up there, even though he's 21 now. Saka's been in this team for a very long time at this point, and everyone trusts him. Everyone knows his talent. I think he's a top 5 player in the world at his position, and he has maturity that is far beyond his years. So, he was excellent. Well, I wouldn't say excellent yesterday, but he produced an excellent moment for Arsenal to, that will hopefully, play well for us down the line. Winner number 2, I think I'm going to give that to Kai Havertz. And I think we all know that it hasn't really been the best start to life at Arsenal for Havertz. He's come in, played that left 8 position, hasn't looked tremendous, really. He's been excellent off the ball, I think, but going forward, he's just been very much lacking confidence. Doesn't even really hit a lot of his passes with conviction, doesn't attack space. But we've seen in a few matches now, right? I think twice against Manchester City, and now against Chelsea, where if he comes in and he's allowed to play this role as kind of a target man, a focal point, right? I know he was technically, I think, functioning as more of a right 8, but for some reason playing on the right side allowed him to play more as that second striker that I think Mikel Arteta wants him to be, in this team. And yeah, he came in, immediately gave David Raya a much more reliable target to hit those long balls to, dealt very, very well with the physicality of guys like Thiago Silva. And that's another thing that we saw against City, right, where Havertz would be holding up the ball and he'd have Ruben Diaz and Nathan Ake, you know, kicking at him, and he didn't seem fazed at all by it. I think that moment he was in his element, where he was just really confident, didn't really seem troubled by anyone around him, holding up the ball, doing his job. And we saw a bit of that against Chelsea as well, where, you know, in the sequence leading up to the Trossard equalizer, he headed the ball on for Nketiah first, and then Nketiah unfortunately wasn't able to hold on to the ball, and Havertz picked it back up again and laid it off to Saka on the right wing, and basically that was the pre-assist for the goal. So Havertz is starting to carve out a role where he can be very, very useful to this team, something like a Giroud light. Yeah, so I think that's something that we need to see more of going forward. And then the last winner is Declan Rice. And since he's come in, the guy has very quickly established himself as one of the top leaders at this club, right? Martin Odegaard is the guy with the armband, but I think Declan Rice is right there in terms of being another captain for this team. He does not shy away from difficult moments. He's almost always the guy who stands up when this team needs someone to. And, you know, when Robert Sanchez messed up a pass yesterday and we were down 2-0, Rice, without hesitation, just fired it from, I think it was 36 yards out into, you know, the bottom corner of the goal. It was a really lovely shot. He took it first time, not all that easy to do. Yeah, it was a moment of world-class skill from him. And then after that, he volunteered for the post-match interviews like he seems to do on a regular basis. And yeah, the guy's showing that 105 million pounds was a bargain for him, to be quite honest. So yeah, running out of things to say about Rice at this point. I think the guys come in and just really bought into what his role is supposed to be and what we're trying to do at the club. So that's always really lovely to see. In terms of losers, I think the first one I want to highlight, people don't like it when you do this, when you do the winners and losers thing and then you pick something that's not a player, but I think it's really important here to highlight the PGMOL's handball rule is not what it should be, right? And Chelsea's first goal came from a penalty that was awarded because William Saliba attempted to jump up and contest a header against Mykhailo Mudryk, and the ball glanced off his arm, which, you know, for my money and for the money of a lot of people who are watching, was in a fairly natural position. But the referee chose to award the penalty on the day, and Cole Palmer slotted it home pretty comfortably, made it 1-0 for Chelsea. And it was just a really annoying moment in the game because this next part might piss some people off. I do think under the current laws of what a handball is and the precedent that has been set by Premier League referees, the call was not wrong. The problem is the rule's wrong. The rule shouldn't be what it is. And I mean, you see this a lot, not just in sport, but across all sorts of fields of law where laws and rules are just dumb and they don't contemplate, you know, the reality of what they are attempting to govern. And I don't think there's much of a difference here, right? The handball rule doesn't really seem to take into account the conditions and the settings of an actual football game where, you know, it feels more and more now like if you want to avoid committing a handball and giving away a needless penalty, you just need to not have arms, which isn't really practicable, PGMOL. So yeah, that's something that is going to have to be worked on, something that's going to have to be changed. Otherwise, we're going to see a lot of these calls moving forward. And yeah, really unlucky for William Saliba, but just another instance in which football's, or I guess, you know, English football's governing body is really letting us down. The second loser from this match is Alexander Zinchenko. And I want to start by saying that he's a great player. right? I think he's still one of the best left backs in the Premier League. You know, a big foundation of what we were able to do last season was his ability to progress the ball and control possession and, you know, invert into midfield alongside Partey and really just help Arsenal dominate proceedings. And he's excellent at that, right? I think he's one of the most technically gifted players in the world. The problem is some game states don't allow you to do that. And in those game states, Zinchenko is often forced into doing a lot of one-on-one defending, which, with all due respect, is very far from being his forte. You know, he was one-on-one with Cole Palmer a lot yesterday, a couple times with Raheem Sterling. Each one of them was terrifying for me, personally. He's a great front-footed defender, surprisingly good at winning his aerial duels. But if you have him, you know, on that left flank, dealing with a winger all by himself, you know, Halloween's coming up. And that's something I'd expect to see in my own personal house of horrors. So I think we're hitting a point where you have guys like Jurrien Timber and Jakub Kivior and Takehiro Tomiyasu, who came on for Zinchenko in this match, all kind of circling that left back position and showing that they have enough on the ball and way more off the ball to be able to compete with Zinchenko for that starting left back role. And I think we're starting to hit a point where you really have to ask yourself, is it worth it to have someone with his technical ability at that position if, you know, you need to compensate for them all the time in defense? You know, we've seen Manchester City move towards essentially playing 4 center backs across their back line, and it's worked out very well for them. I tend to wonder if that's not a direction we should consider moving in as well. So a lot to think about there. Again, Zinchenko's a great player, but I just think his weaknesses are becoming more and more glaring as teams start to target him, you know, on a more and more regular basis. And then the final winner, I think, for this video is Martin Odegaard. And, you know, I said before, he's the guy with the armband, and he's popped up in moments early on in this season where, you know, he's really led by example. He's scored an important goal or, you know, played an assist. He's, again, tied for second in goal contributions. So, you know, he has had his fair share of influence on Arsenal's season so far. But I think it's time to admit that he's gone missing a lot this season. And, you know, I don't think that's because we've misjudged his quality or anything like that. I still think he's a phenomenal player, but I just think he's not in the same positions that he should be, right? I feel like he's a little too high up the pitch. He's a little bit too close to Saka at times, really crowding up that right flank. You know, not deep enough to help progress the ball sometimes. And, you know, maybe that's a product of us playing Jorginho on occasion. But I think if you're playing Rice, you know, you need someone to drop deep and help him progress the ball, because that's not, Rice is solid at it, but that's not, you know, something he's particularly gifted at. And yeah, it feels like it's time to maybe consider rotating Odegaard a little bit more, or maybe moving him to the left where he has runners like Martinelli and Jesus on that side, so he can function more as a playmaker there. Because I just think a lot of our attacking difficulties are stemming from, you know, kind of this sputtering in the right half space that we have right now. And, you know, we saw it again yesterday where he was receiving the ball a lot in those areas and losing it. I know he had like a 70, I think it was 74, 79% passing accuracy, but it felt like every time he tried to do something with the ball, it didn't come off. And, you know, yeah, it just felt like he was invisible a lot of the time. And I know he does a lot of great off-the-ball work. I think he was absolutely phenomenal in that regard against Manchester City. But, yeah, just something's a little off with him. We've needed him on several occasions at this point, and he was not to be found. So I just think that's something that Arteta needs to figure out, and Arteta needs to find a way to put Odegaard back into situations where he can succeed, because right now the current configuration of this team isn't really working for him. But yeah, that'll do it in terms of the winners and losers. Sash and I should be recording the pod tomorrow and talking more throughout this match. But in the meantime, make sure to follow This Week in Arsenal on Twitter at This Week Arsenal. Be sure to subscribe to the channel on YouTube and, you know, comment, like, ring the bell. And you can follow me on Twitter at Shamsdale. Also, just be safe. You can follow me on Blue Sky and Threads as well at Shamsdale. Fingers crossed Twitter actually, you know, manages to not combust. But yeah, check us out on all our socials. And until then, stay safe and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.